Good morning all. Okay. On behalf of School Engineering, okay, I would like to extend my warm welcome to our distinguished industry experts and accountant to this forum session entitled Financial Age, Engineering Economics Insights on Costing and Budget Control. Okay. As we have mentioned before, this is actually part of the module we have organized for year 3, and one of the key aspects is basically exploring cost effectiveness and budget control to the engineering problems that has been a cornerstone of all engineering related recommendations. Okay, any engineering projects that has to be technically sound, socially acceptable, environmentally sustainable, and without any doubt, financially feasible. Hence, engineering decisions are always based on sound knowledge of financial appraisals. Against this backdrop, okay, this forum was put as a sharing session to harness valuable insights from our experts from industry for the benefit of our year 3 students who is currently doing engineering project management. On this note, I would like to invite Mr. Chan Z. Kang, Academic Department Head at Professional Accountancy Center, and he will be serving as your moderator today. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Chan to the stage. Our next distinguished guest is Mr. Molly Haribalan, Director of an organization that focuses on various renewable energy solutions, energy efficiency solutions, and Internet of Things solutions. Do please join me in welcoming Mr. Molly to the stage. Our next guest, who has extensive industry experience in the power-related industry, and of course our alumni of School of Engineering, okay, Mr. Nanda Kumar. Please join me in welcoming Mr. Nanda to the stage. At this point, I'd like to invite Mr. Chan to take over the forum. Thank you all.
Thank you very much, Dr. Siva, and good morning, guys. Taking your breakfast already, so I suppose that the energy levels are full bar now before it start dropping. So I hope with the forum this morning, with the efforts and the initiatives that put in and organized by School of Engineering, I think we are proud to have two of the gentlemen here on stage. Let's give a warm applause again before we get started out of the forum. I'm sure that from the titles and the designations that both the gentlemen are holding right now, being an outsider to engineering from the finance side, I definitely look forward that the sharing today would definitely enlighten and broaden up your horizon. Students from engineering sectors and also the students from professional accountancy to have a cross-path eyesight to see what's the other side of the world. So when we ended the sessions today, I hope that will basically be the key takeaways and the benefits that the synergy effect will really inspire every one of us here. So without further delay, so let's have a seat for two gentlemen here. Right, before we throw out some questions today to start off the forum, in order for you to have a better understanding and also a stronger level of appreciations of the inputs and sharings that given by the two gentlemen, it would be good maybe to understand a little bit where are they from, apart from the title and the designations from the screens that you can see. So from there, during the sharing sessions given by the speakers, we definitely would give the opportunities to the floor to throw in questions and some of the suggestions or inputs that you may have in the mind. You can see the mic is just near to you. So when we start asking, is there any questions from the floor? So just take the courage and speak it up so that you will enjoy and you will benefit more from the two gentlemen and the industry leaders. Okay? And of course, by the end of the session, I will invite the speakers to give some key takeaways for all of us here to really get remembered on this special event today. So, Murali, so we start from Mr. Murali, which you can see he's the founder in one of the firm, the Habitat Enviro boat industry. So maybe we can ask Murali to just tell us about your journey to be where you are today. And second question is that the nature of the businesses that you're in now. And lastly, your current role in the organization. After to you, Murali.
Thank you. Very good morning to everyone. My name is Murali Haripalan. 16 years in the industry of renewables. I operate an SME company, which is 6 years of age right now, Bolt Industries. And Habitat Enviro is another one of those collaborative companies focusing on biomass and biogas. So my track record or experience comes from starting off my career in the renewable space. So I would consider myself lucky I had the right foundation. I'm a local grad, one of the local universities. Did my master's in Malaysia as well, general MBA. And the key interest, if you ask me over time, was career. And then I had an exposure in Singapore for about 6 years. And then came that initiative of why not try running something on my own. So that's how Bolt Industries started. As a company, we focus on energy solutions, so renewable being the core, solar rooftop, solar ground-mounted systems. And of course, as part of the energy conversation is energy audits. So we do for factories and commercials, optimization, HVAC optimization, trying to help customers reduce their bills. And all of this wouldn't be possible if we didn't have an arm looking at IoT, Internet of Things. So our core business has always been from the first two, renewable energy and energy audit. IoT is about maybe 2 to 3%, but it gives us an opportunity to present to a customer a full supply chain or a whole suite of solutions. So that's about it.
How about your role? You're the boss.
So currently at Bolt, it's a very small team. We have 7 engineers. 7 engineers, 1 admin. We focus mainly on engineering design works and also EPC, which means engineering, procurement and construction. So I hope to share some of that experience later on. As the person who founded the company, I don't have any partners, so that's been challenging. But it just means that you are, captain of everything, right? You've got to figure out things on your own sometimes. You make mistakes and you learn from that as well. The good thing is, with peers in the business, you exchange ideas, you learn faster. Yeah? So you don't always have to fail, but you kind of talk, interact, engage the right people. So if you don't know accounting, you talk to an accountant. If you don't know legal stuff, you talk to a legal guy. Don't try to be smart and jeopardize the company. So these are some of the things I hope to share later on. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Murali. I suppose that after hearing the nature of business that Murali is in, I, as an outsider, I will tell you guys, this is the industries that moving forward, where the world is all talking about ESG. Have you guys heard of what is ESG? Environment, social, and the last one, governance. Everywhere in the world, especially the regulatory body, the government, it's starting to implement and enforced by law that companies in all sectors has to be ESG compliant. So one of the meaning is when you run a businesses, whether it is engineering sector or some other sector, you have to make sure your whole supply chain, who do you buy things from, who do you sell things to, every of this businesses member has to be ESG compliant. And what Murali is running is definitely one of the contributor to these 3 elements itself. So what does it mean here? I can foresee the opportunities moving forward. It's bright, it's really, really huge and unlimited with this kind of the directions and the business sector, where you can see a lot of businesses potential and opportunities will go to their businesses in providing energy. Which you can imagine that no matter what industry of businesses you are in, do you need energy? Oh yes, without energy, what can you do? So this is where the future is going to be like. So definitely, I think that it will be beneficial to all of you if we know a little bit more insight on costing, budget controls from that particular field of the industry in the short while. So thank you very much, Murali. Now we are turning to Mr. Nanda. So as you can see from the title, so Mr. Nanda was once where you were now, but of course in the old campuses, not with this kind of fancy auditorium and the facilities here. But indeed, he was from KDU. And he's now an operation manager in GE Solution, as you can see here. So Nanda, tell us about your journey of learning and progressions to bring you where you are today, and the nature of businesses of GE Grid Solution, and finally your current role as an operation manager. Over to you.
Right. Thanks, John, and good morning, everyone. I think the first question was, hopefully you all had your breakfast, and hopefully, probably you all woke up in time to come here. Probably, I'm not so sure. Right. I wouldn't say that I sat in your chair where you are today. Yes, I did my further education in KDU. This was a part-time program with Northumbria. It was a 4-year of pain, right? And you guys are going through a 3-year plus of pain here, right? So it may be a painful time period, probably. Probably it's a carefree time as well, right? Education is important, right? Don't mind if I say that. Education is important. Where you are now is to establish a basis. What you get here may not be the mirror of what you see outside in the world next, right? A lot of innovation is required, self-sustenance, independency is required. So where I came from a very low startup, right? So I did a diploma in a college called FIT. So does it ring a bell to anybody here? Future in trouble, future in toilet, future somewhere else, right? So this was a college, okay, jokes aside, this was a college, one of the pioneers in the 70s, where they started the technological diploma programs. And I graduated from there with a diploma. It was a painstaking 3 years for a diploma, imagine that. And then another part-time 4 years, 4 years of part-time, year 2 and year 3. So my education took me about 7 years. So in the span of those time, I've been with Western Digital as a technician. Then I was managing a company for a foreign investor from India. So I was doing business development. And then I graduated while doing that task, so it was not easy. Then with KDU, and I was with UOWMSAC, another industry. And I had a short stint with one of the oil and gas companies called Arstown, doing sales as well. And finally I'm here now, doing project management. So what does it say about this path, right? So it gave me a lot of insights, a lot of exposure from the ground up to where we are now, right? So where you guys are going is to the next level already. Same as me. So we take it up a notch. We see what is required, how we learn and how we implement. There's no hard and fast rules in this industry. You may already be going through some of the, I would say, course fundamentals, which includes planning, which includes consideration, timeline, return of investment, etc. Right? So I think this is the course that you're going through. And I'm hoping that me and Murali, we could provide you a bit more insights on the practicality of what you will see outside and against what you are seeing here. Okay, so currently I am managing 6 countries, including Malaysia, as operations, and we are from GE Grid Solutions, where we do maintenance for high voltage equipments. So Malaysia will be TNB. So outside of Malaysia will be in Vietnam, it's EVN, and we have got so many other utilities that we provide. That's on the utility side. Also on the independent power generators. Okay, probably you've heard about YTL. A few of them here. Right. So I'm directly in the primary maintenance of the high voltage, and I operate a lean community. So that's another word that you learn upcoming, lean, right? So one of the word is jack of all trades, king of none, right? So before you reach there, you'll need to learn a lot of aspects of the subject as well. So hopefully the sharing session helps you. And I think that's it. Thank you.
Thank you very much, Nanda. Thank you. So my turn to tell you a bit of myself being an outsider, comparing to all of you here in this hall except the students from PAC. My name is Chan, by the way. I'm not new in the campuses because I'm the academic department head of the neighbor of School of Engineering, that our office is just next to School of Engineering for since the first day itself when we are here in the campus. I myself is a chartered accountant. I have seen students from last 20 over years, not only in Malaysia, but also across the Asia as well as Africa, to pursue to become the chartered accountant in respective country. I also have spoken to a lot of working adult students just like Nanda, who are from different background, and of course many of them would surprisingly from engineering background itself, who later has become a chartered accountant. Just to share with you an update, one of the head of the country that lead a professional accountancy body from UK in Malaysia, her first degree was in Bachelor of Engineering. So she was an engineer by graduate and by profession. And later on, she diverted her pathway to become a chartered accountant and now leading a professional accountancy body in Malaysia from the UK. So what does it tell you? Now nowadays, knowledge is borderless. Whatever field that you start your study with, never restrict your futures. Just within your boundary and thinking of the rest of the life, I must be where I am, where I started off. Just look at the two gentlemen. Where they are now, comparing to where they started off, I'm sure that, not to say totally unrelated, but definitely it is far enough for you to see how broad that your futures can land it into. You cannot say 10 years down the road, 20 years down the road, I'm not prepared, I do not want to sit in the boardroom talking to all the lawyers and accountants, even though I'm the engineer who discover and develop all the new products and the solution. You need to be able to speak up. You need to be able to use the language that people understand your mind. Then only you have a chance to sell your ideas and your products and get your product prosper. So, by using my own professional qualification and my own limited experience and knowledge today, I would like to just hear from the two gentlemen here, relating to, as you can see on the title of the forum today, the importance of costing and budget control as a starting point and a stepping stone for you to become an engineer who are able not just to bring up fantastic idea and solution, but it is something like what Dr. Siva has mentioned. Is it acceptable to the investors? Is it okay for the shareholders and the board member to nod their head and say, go ahead with the projects? Before we start talking about will the shareholder be happy with the idea? Will the company be benefiting from your suggestion? Let's get past the board of directors or even your line manager. Are they okay with your idea? So all these things come back to dollar and cents, because we know in this world, apart from energy, as we say, there is some things that you cannot be lacking of. Money. Money is some things that we know money is not everything, but we know without money a lot of things cannot be done. So now it is time for us to put a little bit of our mindset while we are catching our dream to become a professional engineer, just like the two gentlemen they are now. How do you instill financial insight? How do you enhance the business acumen in yourself? How do you bring in the dollar and cents of the DNA into your thinking? So I think that this is where it will best start introducing the content of the sharing this morning. So let's get started off by asking the two gentlemen some of the questions on this title here. I would like to start asking the first questions to Murali. Why do you think costing and budget controls is essential in executing the projects?
Thank you, John, for the question. So guys, before I start, I think there's an opportunity here to learn from an SME side of things, small companies, and also from larger scale companies, MNCs, GLCs. They're completely different procedures, but the fundamentals are the same. You will hear a couple of overlapping terms: accountability, in terms of P&L, right? So the terminologies will not change, but how you do it will differ. So I'm going to share today from a very small team. The truth is, we can't be like the VCs. That's a different ballgame. We can have losses for 10 years and still be like Grab, yeah? But today we're going to talk about actual businesses that requires seed funding. You need to turn profitability, yeah, quickly. So the challenge here is, without profits in your business, there is no business to begin with. Yeah? So that's the fundamental truth. Number two, when we are to do projects, and from an EPC perspective, just to give you an understanding of what it involves, because I think if I just speak very generically, you may not understand the impact. Yeah? So when we do solar rooftop projects, 1 million, 2 million, 3 million ringgit, it can even go more than that. You need some sort of financing in order to execute. You put some money, right? But the customer is not going to pay you 3 million upfront. He's going to see progress. He wants to see design engineering work. He wants to make sure that you've ordered the right materials. So then you have progressive payments. You have milestone payments. Now this may differ from company to company, but let's say a deposit of 10%, right? Then you do some authority approvals, you do some submission. Then he says, okay, fine, I'm going to put another 20-30% for your materials. In my nature of business, our material cost is 70%, yeah? From solar panels, inverters, cables, trunking, right? So scaffolding, all of this is about 60 to 70%. So imagine that if I were to get my costing wrong, that 70% won't be paid to me, right? Because the customer will say, look, you've not completed your task, on what basis do I make those payments to you? So I have to be very careful with my costing, right? A small slip up, like a zero goes wrong somewhere, a comma is wrong somewhere, I'm screwed, right? And sorry for the language, but it just means that I need to be accountable, and not just as a company owner, but as an engineer. When I was starting out my career, you had check and balance, right? So you would do your costing, then somebody else will come in and see whether you've kind of budgeted accurately, right? So we'll touch more on this later on. But because the fundamental is all about profit and loss, the milestone payment plays a huge role over the period of time. For example, we may have projected that the project may take about 3 to 6 months, right? And we say, look, a 15%, 20% margin is sufficient, we can conclude this within 6 months, this number of man hours. But what if there's material delays? What if there's manpower shortage, right? You can't get permits for workers. And all of a sudden this becomes a 1.5 years project. That 20% margin goes away, right? All of a sudden you've got all these overheads to pay for the next couple of months, right? So P&L, extremely crucial. Mistakes do happen, I'll be very frank with you. But it all boils down to check and balance, how well you did your homework, and then of course taking accountability. It shouldn't be like, oh, I'm working for somebody else. It's okay, if I mess up here, I'll just shift companies, which is usually the mindset with many younger engineers. But if you say, look, I'm going to take ownership of the project, I'm going to make sure that I turn it profitable for the company, I'm going to prove my worth, right? And I keep improving from here on, then that's the best way forward. So that's about it for now.
I think there's a great insights from an entrepreneur who tells you the level of commitment, accountability and responsibilities in addition to your technical knowledge itself. It is not something that we just create a mess out of it and then we just wipe the hand and just go away. I like this kind of insights where it really groomed the soft elements of not only an engineer but any field of the professional, which need to have this kind of characteristics in order for you to stay long enough in the industry, right? I think since this is the first questions that open up the talk, so I may also want to extend these questions to Nanda because you are also from a larger scale of the organization. So the project you're handling is probably different from Murali. So what's your think and the thought?
Yeah, thanks Murali and John, and thanks for the question as well. So I think the few words there I would pick it up from or resonate from what Murali has said, right? Accountability. Right, that is very important. Ownership, that is also very important. So what these two words brings us in that session is that it actually comes back to sustainability. So any decision that you want to make, it has to come back to sustainability. Now, yes, we want to talk about return on investment, return of whatever, right? Money, dollar cents for any organization, even your own entrepreneurship, or corporate, money becomes important. Now, the difference is who finances what. Larger corporates, you get very easy credits from the bank. So we are from GE, right? So when we say GE is a conglomerate, used to be, and they are splitting up, but the name by itself, it's a brand that brings about finances, that brings about money, control, right? Power, and most of all, brings trust. Now, where do we go from here, right? Probably for EPC long-term project, we want to see those money return to stabilize the business so that there are no further losses later. Yes, margin is important, right? But the primary goal of executing is that you don't go to a loss. Why you don't go to a loss? Any businesses, your overheads take over your basic cost. Okay? Your cost can be X%, but your overheads will be under 20% of your cost. So in any organization, when you work, you are actually trying to cover the cost plus. The cost plus is where the margin comes into place, right? So these are just like what Murali has said. The fundamentals remain the same. What we want out of the business. We need a business, we need the sustainability, and we need to be able to continue the business, right? Losses, mistakes are something that is human nature. You are not AIs, right? So AI is coming, and we talk about Terminator and all this other stuff, but end of the day, a costing by AI and a costing by human nature prevails, right? You will, as a young person going into the field, hey guy, I don't know how to do the costing, man. I don't know what's happening. I do not know what's happening there. But you guys have the privilege, are born with the luxury of abundance of information, right? Google can be right or wrong, Wikipedia can be right or wrong, but the basis of the information is there, right? So this kind of knowledge will instill you to stand out, plus your education from the colleges, and definitely I resonate with Chan. Engineering brings a stronger basis for you to develop into any other niche, right? When we say cost control, you're already a cost controller. You're already a finance field person, right? And then you're also going to a technical field. Doesn't mean that you're doing electrical, you're not going to touch anything on the mechanical or civil. You're going to touch a lot, right? So it gives you a path to see where I should bring the cost, how to sustain the cost, and how do I return the cost of investment within certain time. So me, I'm from the projects as maintenance. What do we look at? We look at sustaining the margin. So that is where the profitability comes in. So that is the final result of any costing that you do, profitability, within how many years. Right? Return of investment will be how you sustain the cost. Your cost plus will be how you come back as a profitable organization, whether you are enterprise or non-enterprise, doesn't matter. Profitability comes into it.
Thank you very much, Nanda. So, guys, Nanda has just brought up a few of the technical terms. To engineering students, I'm not sure whether you are a little bit clear on this. Accountancy students, I suppose there's no reason for you to say what is Nanda's talking about on overhead and cost, stuff like that. If you just think about, let's say, UOW Malaysia, okay, where we provide educations to you, students from all the faculties and the schools. Who provide the services to you directly? It is the lecturers that we teach you. So would lecturers get paid? Yeah, they will, right? So from the education's viewpoint, the money that the universities pay to the lecturers in terms of the payroll, as what Nanda has said, this is the cost. It is I would say, direct cost that relate to each and every of you as not only a student but also a customer. But where do you study? What's the platform? What's the avenues that you are having your classes? It is in these campuses. Is there a cost to incur to maintain and run these campuses to provide you all this facility? Yes. But the thing is that how do we charge? How do we calculate the cost of the rental for this building to each one of you per head? How much? Yeah, that is the kind of a difficult questions to figure out. How much is the rental per month, per pax of the students? So this is what we say. Costs that cannot directly relate to every units of the product that we're hedging. If you do read up newspapers by following up what exactly large corporations are doing. Take for example, capital A. You know capital A? What do they used to call by? Capital A. What was the former name of capital A? Air Asia. So if you happen to follow up the news of Air Asia, one of the very significant ingredient, I would use the word, is the fuel, air fuel. The petrol, they pump into the aeroplane to fly. As what Murali says is very true, the price of petrol, the crude oil, is basically you have no idea what exactly this price is going to be like, even just days. So how would they be able to control the bottom line and make sure the airfare they charge on you, they cannot change, right? Because you may have bought your airfare, you may have paid it months ago or years before, but the oil price will just shoot up. So can they come and say, hey, sorry, with this airfare we rugi, we are loss making, so you have to top up? They can't. So what is the magic behind? It is something called hedging. They can lock their price for the future purchases of the ingredient or the supply with several kinds of the hedging instrument to ensure that there is no more uncertainty on the prices. So this is where it helped them to do the pricing and strike a balance between the competitiveness of the pricing and the bottom line, the profitability. So Nanda, after you, what do you think the effective costing and budget control will help in your project's implementation and ensuring the success of your businesses?
Yeah, okay, thanks, Chan. So again, just to give you the high level of the situation, sustainability and profitability, right? So this is what we want to achieve with each costing. So there is no real bottom line precision on budgeting and costing. It involves a large part of experience and like what Murali has shared, trendings. All right. So when we make a business, we are dependent on a lot of I would say support structures. And one of the key support structure is our supply chain, right? So when we say or we call it as a supply chain, what does it trigger or what does it ring to you? It's a supply, right? Supply of products, supply of services, supply of many items that is coming together for your project. So the first and foremost effective way is to fix your supply chain resources, all right? Quotations, etc. Yes, these are something that is after them. Any sustained business will have a certain supply chain fixed. You may have one, you may have two, you may have three, it doesn't matter. So that is your first basis in your supply chain environment. Then you go beyond, which you will need more suppliers to come in. That's where you make your comparison, knowing the market. Make your market research. Very simple. You want to go and buy a PS5. Okay, best. You want to buy a TV or a monitor. The first research what you do is either you go to Lazada or you go to Shopee or any other platform to just check what is the price. Then you go back to your store. Probably you go to Harvey Norman. Hey guy, this is X amount. Can you match? He says yes, I can give you better. Right? So it's a similar concept in the market to touch base on who gives you the better price. Right? So first of all, you fix your supply chain. So this guy, this is the rate, and for the next 1 year, this is my rate that you are fixing. You're not hedging, you're fixing the rates with them. Right? Then you find your next supplier, which is not your common scope. Probably scaffolding is not something that you fix all throughout here. So you could have 2 or 3 or 4 of those named contractors listed to you. Right? So in this way, your supply chain is first fixed. Then definitely, as a junior person, you take out the historical references of the past projects which are similar, may not be the same, which are similar. If it's the same, it's easier on you, right? You need to take the economic sense of the country, what is going on. So first of all, Forex, we are totally impacted with Forex, right? And the fluctuation is really not appreciating. So like me, for instance, when I do the profit and loss, so as an operation manager, I have to take care of the profit and loss. So that comes back to the direct cost and the indirect cost plus the profitability. So we look into the currency fluctuations every month. So currently what it shows is that our currency is really not appreciating. The trend line doesn't indicate that. So it's a simple trend line in your Excel, right? So you've got even more platforms like Smartsheet. Hopefully you all heard about it, Smartsheet, right? It's the next form after Excel, where this form allows you to co-share. And it gives you the updated who has changed and what have changed. And that platform, you can use it for your Gantt chart, for your tracking of your economics or your business structure, right? So like what I said, there is no hard and fast, but the key things in a budget preparation is your supply chain, right? And then you will have your basic direct cost, which is you yourself, the organization cost, which will be in most cases provided for, but unless if you are an enterprise, you have to pay your own direct cost. You say, okay, I'm the boss, I'm paid 30,000, so that's my salary, guys, so sorry. You're my technician, I'm paying you 1,000, so, I mean, example, right? So your fixed cost. Then you have your overheads, like what Chan has said. Overheads are something that you don't see, indirect costs, right? This will come as like your warranty cost, any other cost, right? Your transportation, your maintenance, etc. So all this combined, right, will give you a certain basis. So that's why they said, if you are with a corporate, you have certain milestones given to you, right? If you are an enterprise, you have to work out to some extent. But in all these cases, nothing is or should be mechanical in nature. This is the problem we are facing in a lot of structures, even in the corporate world. People tend to become very mechanical in nature. Hey guys, this is the process set, I'm going to follow this closely. But no guys, you are doing engineering, right? You are supposed to think beyond. Even for the accountant is dollar and cents, yes, no, yes, no, yes, no, right? But as an engineer, as somebody who has done variations of the technical studies, right? You need to think out of the box or think out of the norm, right? When they say norm, it becomes mechanical. Don't be mechanical in structuring a budget. You have got a lot of structures, a lot of dollars and cents which does not maintain for the next year. Even for the next month it doesn't, right? So the effective way, fix your supply chain. That means who are your suppliers, make sure they are constant in your nature. If you're not looking into overseas, the hedging doesn't come in place, and in most cases it's very expensive to hedge as well. So certain organizations, they cap it to a certain amount, probably 100,000 or 200,000. Right? You cannot hedge a project if it's just below 100,000. Probably even 1 million doesn't make sense because you've got a bank cost to it, even if you hedge. So these are all your overheads that you need to effectively sideline and think, right? And you have to see how long is the project, what is the best timeline I can finish this project, and to minimize those, I would say, residues of the cost, right? So.
Thank you very much, Nanda. So I think I can take some of the key points that what Nanda has shared just now. Guys, you definitely will be involving in budgeting processes in any kind of industry that you are going to be involved in. It doesn't mean that you are just an engineer. Don't ask me, don't come and trouble me when you come to dollar and cents, because we need your input, we need your feedback, especially your real inputs from the floor, what can be done, what cannot be done. From this kind of input, then only the finance team will be able to turn this kind of activities into dollar and cents. So with this kind of actions that you can do or you plan to do, what's the cost like? So this is exactly what Nanda has said. You play a role in ensuring coming up with a realistic, coming up with an achievable budget. As a result of that, you are actively involved in the whole budgeting processes. Can you get away if the budget is failed to be achieved or we have overshoot the budget? Can you get away? You can't get away, right? When the board of directors, when the senior members is like losing the head and say, I need to talk to people to find out what actually has happened that caused the overburn on the budget. Do you think they only call accountant? No, they will also call you in. So before things goes wrong, when you start at the planning stage, you already need to aware of your responsibility and accountability, because good or bad, you definitely will have it, because you are the first person who provide the figure, who gave the suggestions to the finance team and accountant to turn everything into financial plan. So if the plan doesn't work, if the plan is not practical, you hold a very high level of accountability and responsibility on that. So that's why what Nanda have highlighted to you, you cannot just focus into what you are doing in your firm, because your money spent involved heavily with who are you going to buy things from. What are the choices that you have, like what Murali have said? Why do they insist to have 5 sources of supplier for comparison? Because you have to start controlling your cost from the planning stage by looking at who will be involved in the supply chain. So from there, you will start your preventive measure for making sure your costs can spend within the limits that what your board of directors and your investors will allow you to do so. And secondly, I think that you have to be more flexible in mind. If your investors say, no, I don't like this kind of spending, you have to bring this down by 20%. You cannot go and tell your investor, sorry, cannot be done. Investor is the one who hire you. So when people say, I want to bring it down by 20%, you have to think outside the box, right? And outside the norm, as what Nanda has said, to figure out a solution that cater to this kind of budget constraint, which both the gentlemen has highlighted. This is actually the practicality of your engineering expertise to allows you to explore, to allows you to think outside the box and the norm to get things done. Now, the next thing I would like to ask, go ahead.
Just to add on, when Nanda mentioned about not to be too mechanical, see, all these forms are just templates. I'll give you an instance where the same project would have different costing. So when we do a solar rooftop project, whether it's for factories, houses, or even commercials, we usually assume normal working hours, manpower, right? So 8 hours up to Friday, sometimes half a day on Saturday. But there are also instances where a customer says, look, I'm operating during those hours, you can only work at night. So if you're not aware or if you're not putting in this input, the financial guy wouldn't know, right? He can't check on your work. So you have to assume that, oh, if someone's going to work at night, it's going to be 1.5 times more. If he's going to work on Saturday, Sunday, it's going to be double. All of a sudden, the same project has a different cost to it. And hence, the selling price will also be different. Yeah, so a template is there for you to key in, for you to input, for you to see the big picture. But it always matters what you key in, right? It's only as smart or as dumb as what you put. Yeah, so good.
Okay, thank you very much, Murali, for your add-on input itself. So we heard that how important budget is to make sure you strike a balance between to get your job done and also to please the management's decisions on the financial spending itself. Now, I just want to ask 2 of the gentlemen here. Once the budget is prepared, okay, imagine that, I'm sure that some of you may have also have a habit of having some kind of personal financial planning. Maybe as the early of the year, you already know how much you're going to spend. But do you have a financial planning habit? Do you? No, if I were to throw these questions to the floor, I don't think a lot of us will raise their hand because we are kind of shy to say, no, I don't really have this kind of financial planning habit. But when you start work, can you say, sorry boss, I don't have a financial planning habit? Well, cannot, right? Because the money is not yours. If the money is yours, you can do whatever you like. So my question is that, when engineer and the finance team has come up with a budget, what's next? Will the budget be a schedule or an Excel to just keep in the drawer, or just keep in the hardware and until the end, for formality-wise, we just take it up for show? Or does budget play an active role in monitoring and guiding your project implementation? What do you think, Nanda?
Yeah, so this is where the interesting part comes in, right? So first we do the boring part, costing. How much am I doing my financial control for the year? I think I throw this question to the forum, right? So how many of you actually have your own personal planning of your financial expenses throughout the year? Probably some of you are working.
Me.
Probably some of you are supported by the family. It doesn't matter, but you have a financier, right? So we take it from that point. So you have a permanent financier, either your part-time job or your family, it doesn't matter. But how many of you here actually plan your expense for the year? Can I have a show of hands? Right? So this is where your basis of financial management starts in your projects. It's a common sense of debit and credit, how much I get, how much I spend, right, for the year, and how much I am going to save, right? So this is where I'm taking you after the budgeting, approved, contract in hand, execution. Hey, I've got 1 million, I can spend as I like. No, it doesn't work that way. So in your budget, you will have multiple structures of costing. Your man hour, your transportation, your material purchase, international, local, warranty, risk. You will have something like 20-30 items depending on the size of the business, what you're looking at, right? What will be imminent in the budget structure is direct, indirect cost. Chan has said that earlier. It's a direct cost and indirect cost, right? So indirect costs are some things that you don't see. Direct costs include your certain overheads already. How do I spend this, right? So now I budget a project and I budget an execution. So say guys, you've got 18 months to complete this project. That doesn't mean you have 18 months of manpower to complete the project. It doesn't work that way, right? You will have so many minus of that 180 days to complete your project. So let's say you have got a project manager on the project, you've got a project engineer on the project, you've got a project field service guy on the project, somebody on the project, a safety guy, etc. Right? So all this is costed for. You won't need a safety guy all throughout the project, right? Unless when you start the construction, you will have it, right? So most of the time in a project execution, like myself, I'm on the service. Even EPC is slightly different. So most of the time in our scope, the material plays a larger part. It's like 60-70% of the cost. So that's something Murali already shared, right? And then you've got 30% of the time on execution, right? In all through this time, the project manager is the one who's managing the overall project. Then you need to manage the timeline of certain people. So this is where your Gantt chart now comes into place as the execution point. How long do I take? When do I need these people? Am I within this budget? Right? So normally there's a team that creates the budget and there's a team that executes the budget. Okay? So this is where the whole adventure starts. It doesn't mean that I'm giving you so much of amount and I can run this amount in such a way. No. It normally, in a perfect organization, you will have a ±5% between the tendering and the handover. So this means your project is well coordinated and is within a certain cushion to execute, right? And during the handover is when you, the executioner, unless the return of experience is shared, you will ask the proper questions and make the proper sanity checks with the counterparts. Now, what happens here, right? You realize that, guys, I'm not able to execute this project. So in my case, so I managed a project with the utility. It's quite a high maintenance project. So we've got a sales team that does the tender, etc., and they've got a certain team of it, and then they come to the projects to execute. So I'm executing the project. What I will identify is after the costing, although it's approved, people are there in line, it's sold, we will have to recheck and say, what is the feasibility and the realistic execution time, right? So if it requires, you need to relook into the budget, even as an executioner, and reallocate the certain qualities or the imminent requirements to complete your project without further loss. Meaning, I'm doing this and I'm ensuring after this there's no more loss. And you get the management's agreement. So what does it say here is, it doesn't mean I'm giving you 1 million, I can execute the 1 million. No. So you've got a cost that I've got to complete, and your primary task will be to also save that cost. Alright? To improve the profitability. Okay? In the best cases, we want to retain the margin or the profitability of the project, in the best cases. But we must also be prepared for the worst and the best of the cases. A project manager or a project executioner succeeds only when he is fully in control of the budget. He knows where to spend what and he knows what to minimize. So it comes back to the previous sharing, your sourcing capabilities, your supply chain capabilities. So you should know what the market has, what are your suppliers giving. in order to find the best to suit your requirements. Right? So when they do the tender, they'll fix that, look, I'm looking at this. Probably they'll look at the high side. Doesn't matter. But it doesn't stop us, again, not to be mechanical, be proactive, reactive, and practical about executing the project in a realistic manner. So the budget is there, improve the budget or maintain the budget.
Thank you very much, Nanda. Murali, what is your say about what's next once the budget is on the table? So how do you get it materialized?
I just want to take a step back as well. So Nanda has spoken about project execution, I resonate well with him on that. You also have to realize that when you are bidding for certain projects, management will have different aspirations. So what you may do on a budgeting is, you may say, I want 20% margin, fantastic, right? But in order to win the job, management may have different directions. They also look at the implementation timeline, they also look at cash flow. So you may be looking at one project, but the company could be taking 3 or 4 projects simultaneously, right? So cash flow is very important in that, completing the project, as what Nanda has mentioned. So at that point, management may say, look, it's a riskier project, because you may not be fully aware of everything, right? You're learning, you're picking up your knowledge, you're seeing what the industry is doing. But that's where the management sign-off is also important, and this is where you have accountability. So you may do your budgeting, but you also need to make sure that you have the right sign-offs, everybody's in tender. One of the common problems that we have, like for us it's a small team, but larger organizations, the salespeople have KPI, so they will sell everything and anything in order to hit the KPI. So a lot of time the trouble comes back to the project team, because all of a sudden, they only have so much to spend. Now, one way to overcome this is, of course, getting a buy-in, but again, different organizations, they're very large. Some, inter-country, some inter-continent, right? Somebody else does the sale, somebody else execute. So there's always going to be these challenges. But what you could do when you're doing your budgeting is, of course, getting everyone to sign off saying, hey, I've gotten your input, can you agree on these numbers? Then you go back to your management and say, I've discussed internally, these are the agreed numbers, can I get your sign off? Because end of the day, you've got your research, you've got your numbers, you've got your supporting documents. But it shouldn't come back to you where all of a sudden everybody says, no, you are the one who said this, and no one else takes accountability. So this happens in organization, right? So you want to make sure that you've done your homework, you've got everybody to sign off. Now, moving on to once you've secured the job, that's what Nanda has mentioned, you don't actually have that 1 million. There are times where you want to buy suppliers and the management comes back to you and say, sorry, we spent the money somewhere else already. Can you try to collect more deposit or wait for the next milestone? And all of a sudden you realize that beautiful 6 months that you had turns into 5 months, 4 months, and you still have to work within those constraints. So you got to adapt. You got to look at options. You got to look at communicating these constraints with also your end customer. Guys, always remember, when you do, in business especially, of course in normal life, in relationships and all, but in business, it's always better to be upfront with the client when you have these constraints, to anticipate. Yeah, so this is the project management side, but you also have to anticipate a risk. A customer would also appreciate had you brought this forward to them early enough to say, look, we really can't manage at this budget. We have a cost escalation. Look, these are the numbers. This is what our vendors are saying. Look, this is what is happening with the currency. I quoted you at this price, but now it's like, example, US pound I think went up to 6, right? So all these are dynamic movement in any project. It's okay to bring it up and say, I understand that we've signed a contract, I understand this was the budget, but look, this is the reality. Because at one point, you may also say, look, why should I do the project if I'm going to suffer losses, right? Then it becomes a legal tussle, a legal issue. So when you do budgeting, you can also still go back to the customer and say, look, I need a review, or I need to extend the project timeline, but are you okay with it? Again, it's important to get a sign-off. Please don't call, don't WhatsApp and say, oh, customer agreed. It doesn't work that way. In a contract, you have to have proper email trails, letters. You need to be supported with proofs. Yeah? So this is more of project implementation, but coming back to the question, that budget, in my case, at least from an SME perspective, we've realized that sometimes there are customers who are willing to listen. These are not millions and billions with utilities, large organizations, they're very stringent. But with the SME, sometimes it pays to ask and say, look, this is the reality. Should I do this, I would go under, right? Or I won't be able to service this. Can we look at a differential pricing, or can I get some cash upfront to support the purchase of certain materials? So when it comes to costing, it doesn't have to be, oh, it's only my problem. The customer is your end buyer, right? So you also want to make sure that you can meet his expectation of delivery and also performance.
Thank you very much, Murali. I think the insights that both gentlemen have shared has brought something into my mind. Firstly, a lot of us thought that once the budget has been tabled out, we just close our eye, we just execute as planned. This may be right if the whole market environment is kind of predictable and stable, without a sudden outbreak of disasters or pandemics like COVID. Well, everything is just so smoothly that, of course, implementation of budget is always a straightforward kind of the task. But what I think both gentlemen have highlighted, which is very, very true since the outbreak of the pandemic, it changes the way we see things in the world. We couldn't just take it for granted and say, well, there's not going to be another pandemic, it's going to be outbroken again in the next couple of years' time. I think instead we have to think about anything can happen in the next moment. So the dynamic mentality of doing things has to be there, including your budget implementation. It has to be a dynamic approach of implementations approach. Keep your eye open. If things not going towards the way that you anticipate, be alert. There's no way to just keep sticking to the budgets that is no longer applicable and relevant to the current environment. So this is, I think, what the two gentlemen have highlighted, which I think your book would not really tell you, including the professional accountancy study, would never tell you, hey, stay alert on the contingency planning. So having said so, guys, have you watched Mission Impossible? Do you? No. So after these sessions today, maybe you're going to watch, because there's a lesson for you to learn. It is relating to what I think both the gentlemen have said. Then you were just scratching the head, what has it to do with Mission Impossible? It is not only the current episode of Mission Impossible. If you do go back and watch all the previous episodes of Mission Impossible, there was one kind of features that consistently carried by the main actor named Tom Cruise. Do you notice that in every episode of Mission Impossible, Tom always encounters certain kind of situations whereby we plan to do things in this way. Just out of sudden, things change. Those of you who have watched the current episodes, do you remember how he jumped off the cliff? Was this the original plan? If you have watched the movie, if you don't know what I'm talking about, maybe you are sleeping, go and watch again. Was this the original plan? Jumping off the cliff from the motorbike? No, right? That wasn't the plan to go onto the train. Things change. Things change, plan changed. You got to get the job done. So engineer and finance people have to have this kind of dynamic thinkings, which I always tell my students, whatever you do in life, always need to have a plan B. And I'm sure that when you have watched a lot of movies, not only Mission Impossible, plan B is some things that comes to mind. So how does it relate to your study? Scenario planning. Worst case scenario analysis, sensitivity analysis. For banking sector in particular, stress testing. I don't know whether you have come across all this kind of technical name, but this is somehow it relates to the mindset of implementation of budgets and plans. Right, gentlemen? Anyway, now since we start talking about some technical terms that we may have learned in classroom, so at this moment, guys, do you have anything that cross your minds about what you learn in books that you may want to ask the speaker about what's their view? Speaker, if I have learned this in my subject, so I'm just wondering how does these things that really can contribute to my work and my role in the employment? Do you have anything of this in your mind? Do you want to have any kind of questions that pertaining to this area, application of knowledge, that you want to ask our speaker? Any one of you? Any one of you? Any things that you learn in books? Yeah. You can just use the mic there. Right. Very good. You just push out the button. Do you see that? Yeah, very good. Yeah, it's on.
So I have one question for Mr. Nanda. Just now
You can just pull out the mic and speak. Yes.
I have one question. So maybe you could share some real world experience or your self experience on let's just say if there is insufficient budget so how does it affect the project to lead to failure or setbacks?
So again, Mission Impossible, right? plan B, plan C, whatever plan lah. We just got to make it work, right? Okay, so coming back, real case scenario. This will go back into the topic of legal. So I repeat my word, jack of all trades, king of none. So when you do a project management or management of such engineering perception, you will need to look into legalities, finance, whatever it takes, I would say, right? And you need to be exposed to a lot of things. So in all cases, the first and foremost thing about executing, we go about executing. Running a tender is different. First you tender and for you to get the job. So now, Ishan, your question is, when we get the job and we're executing the job, what happens? So you've got these contractual matters, right? Corporates may have contract managers separately, legal separately. SMEs, they don't have the luxury. They don't have a legal, they don't have a contract manager. You are everything. So let's put it in a bucket that you are everything. The first and foremost thing to read is what you have offered. What are the terms and conditions that you have offered this with? And what are the terms and conditions that you have accepted this contract with? This is very crucial. This is the foremost basis of any project or execution. You need to read this context. The customers and yours. In my case, right, I'm working for an organization. So yes, I need to meet the customer's expectations, and I use this word often. You need to meet the customer's expectations contractually, not socially obligated, not personally obligated, nothing to do of that sort. It's a contractual management and you are committed to them contractually. So in these clauses, you will have a lot of conditions, late clause, late delays, warranty, this price mechanism is also there in your clauses, but you need to read it out. Now, in a contract management, every clause is read differently by every and each individual. Is how you read and how you interpret. This is how the court of law works. Is what you have read and what you have interpreted and how you perceive the judge of the contents. Same thing happens here. You are over budgeted. So you've only got two scenarios, and this shouldn't come in the last minute. When it comes in the last minute, your accountability is in stake, right? Your ownership is in stake. Your exposure to the field is in stake, right? So I'm not putting the pressure on you. So you need to do a first risk management analysis where we have spoken about to follow the budget and control the process. Now we are doing that. And let's say we take it as the letter. That means you have already in track and you already identify that, hey, I'm going to go over budget and I still need to complete the project because you're contractually bound. So what are the aspects you're going to see? First and foremost, what as Murali said earlier, you meet the customer to discuss what are the causes of the losses. Is it because of the environment, the business environment, first thing? Or is it a cause that the business or your organization has overlooked? So you need to do this assessment. So if it's the customer, you try and reach out to the customer. It can be any customer, don't limit yourself. You need to reach out to the customer or the next party to discuss this forum. Internally, you need to reach out to your management. You cannot shy away. You have to say, manager, this is happening, what do we do next? So it's always the next steps. The real case scenario today is we are in Malaysia and we are in Asia and we are in Southeast Asia. The characters here, the characters within Asia and outside of Asia are totally different, right? What we look at is a way forward. So how the way forward comes, probably if it's here, the pressure is high. If it's outside, they say what we can do next. The pressure will still be on. So it will be the next steps. So what we need to do is analyze back where we went wrong or what was missed. Okay, where was this, what do you call it? Where did this issue rise from? Is it at the tendering stage or something that you have overlooked at the execution stage? That means your budget, you are not in control of your budget. Or there they have overlooked something in your stages. So in my cases, like what I've shared earlier, in my business, that is what has happened. So we have gone over budget. So what do we do? Contractually, can we pull back? So I've got a business project running in Thailand, and this is with the utility. So the scope is to supply switchgears and install these switchgears. Alright, so we have supplied the switchgears, and then the installation clause was not clear, whereby it is open-ended and you can finish anytime. So we are talking about 10 years down the road, but the costing was only for the first 2 years. Something that's open-ended. Today we are at a loss. We are already at a negative margin. So what do? Can we exit the clause? Yes, we can, because we have already had some success in delivering the product. Alright? But contractually, what does it say? Alright? First thing and foremost, we stand on the contract. Can we execute the contract in a positive way? That means we still complete and minimize the risk. Or can we set that we have already lost so much? Or can we gain and normalize the profitability? So all this will go back to discussions. You cannot step back. We are bound by a contract, we are bound by a law, or the legality of the situation is there. It's just that the direction of this loss, is it internal or is it from external? Can we go back to the customer to get back these losses? Okay, so for instance, TNB, this is not with us because we were aware of it. So they've got certain costs that you have to pay a levy to the CIDB based on your contractual documents. That means if you are doing a business more than 500,000 locally, you got to pay a 1.125% levy to CIDB. In most cases locally, people miss this. I won't shy away. Even in a corporate forest, we didn't do it, right? And then now they're implementing this. So what has happened to that contractor? They have gone back to the customer, TNB, and said, guys, I've sold this, but I've excluded all this. So I need to renegotiate, increase the contractual terms, and make those variation orders, etc. They'll have to do. Those are the cases where you need to highlight to the customer. But if it's your fault, it's clearly your fault, to go back to the customer, you can try. It's a 50-50. Don't stop yourself. A word again, don't stop yourself. Don't be mechanical about the nature. Your relationship with the next party is important. Then you also discuss with internally and come up with the proper budget and the root causes of those situations. Because at the end of the project, you will always have a return of experience to share your root cause analysis of the success, failure, okay, both, and how you want to implement better. Alright? So you need to discuss that problem is imminent, is a real problem, but you need to discuss to the relevant parties to accommodate that back. It's not a pleasant situation, trust me, it's not a pleasant situation, but you need to face it. So that's why you become more accountable, you have this ownership, and you become much more strong in managing those costs upcoming.
Thank you very much, Nanda, for responding to your questions. Murali, you want to address or share your thoughts about the questions that raised by Yishun? Blowing budget, in simple, I suppose, yeah.
No, I think one of the things, as hard as it is, when you're over budget and you've exhausted everything that Nanda has mentioned, is sometimes to then make that business decision. Because in some larger organizations, you get blacklisted up to 3 years. So you need to think of it holistically and you say, look, do I lose today or do I lose long term? It comes down to that, right? So if you say, look, on a $10 million job, I was supposed to make, let's say, 800,000 to $1 million, and I'm still going to end up making 200,000-300,000. The margins are lower. Is that acceptable? Go ahead. But on a $1 million job, on a $10 million job, and suddenly you're negative 100,000, negative 200,000, then the question is, do you want to do out of pocket, or you say, look, I'm going to accept this 3 years blacklist, but at least we live another day to fight, right? And that's another conversation. So everything that Nanda has mentioned, but your final decision will then rest on these two outcomes, because you may also end up ruining your reputation, right? You may think that it's okay, 3 years blacklist, one customer, I can go to another customer. But news travels. All of a sudden they say that, hey, this guy come bid in at low price, then cancel contract, don't execute. Then you realize that if you're working for people, it's fine, you find another job. But if you're the business owner, then do you want this kind of stigma against your company? Yeah, so this is something else that's just slightly beyond the P&L side of things, but you've got to make a decision then.
I think this basically have because I have the next questions to ask, I suppose that after hearing from both the gentlemen, let me hear what you're saying. There's this questions asking the needs to comply to some kind of legal requirements for budgeting and cost control of engineering project in Malaysia. So is there such a thing? That is legislations or law saying that you must comply to the budgets that you have put it up on a particular project? Is there such a thing or practice in Malaysia?
Yeah, so when you run a project, right? So in with large organizations, so they go by the FIDIC law, right? So you got a few FIDIC laws there. That is one, and they bind it with the contract. So again, specifically to say there is a law, there is many laws to cover. So this comes back to contract management. So that's where your legality comes in. Are you complying with the local laws and regulations? So in general, some smaller organization will put to comply with local laws and regulations. Very simple. It's a very big word. It's a very small sentence with a scope that's very wide, right? So you've got to comply with DOSH, that is the Department of Occupational Safety and Hazard, right? And then you got CIDB, right? Construction Industrial Development Board to comply with. You've got contract law as well. Okay, so there's no specific law. There are combinations of law in this matter, and the legality of the situation comes back to the contract itself, contract management. All right, the contract has to be something executable, that's something that is not overwhelming, something that's agreed by both parties to meet. Right? In most cases, when they want to win, the sales guy will just go and sign and come back and pass it to you. Us projects that we did, hey, how can you even comply to this policy when it's against the company policy, right? So then we'll have to have a debate. We have to go back to the customer and say, customer, we cannot comply with this. We'll have a certain debate, right? But these are constructive, positive debates. You have to have it, right? Don't shy away. Don't say no, customer will say no, right? In many cases, I had one, my very first case with GE, when I was running one of the maintenance project up north. That was quite a big project locally. It was about close to 20 million kind of a project. And we are facing a problem of late delivery, right? And it constitutes 15% of the amount. So it's a large amount. So I went back to the sales guy, being a newbie in that organization, and said, hey guy, how can we? No, TNB will never agree. No, it is not the case. I had approached TNB, they had supported, they said, okay, you try. Right? They didn't decline. The first thing is your approach, and say what are the reasons, what are the conditions, right? So certain customers, they have this way. That means first you can apply for the late delivery penalty reduction, and you can appeal for that. So in my case, I was successful in reducing about 2 million plus local currency, and the final NP was only about 80,000. So it goes to show your negotiation spirit, your exposure, and your relationship with the customer to come back to where you want to stand. So back to the question, legal. So the legality of the whole project will depend on your contract and the prevailing local laws and regulations. So you need to comply with that.
So what Nanda mentioned is FIDIC, which is commonly used in Malaysia. But depending on the industry that you're in, sometimes when you deal with JKR, they have their standards as well, 123A. Sometimes it's a PEM contract, sometimes it's IEM based, right? So when you do your P&L, your accounting, budgeting, it's also very important to understand what are those regulations. Because from a legal standpoint, sometimes it's arbitration, sometimes it's courts, right? And all of these have different costs to it. And as what Nanda mentioned, you can write in for extension of time. It's within your rights to kind of request, explain. So that's where you negotiate a lower, what we call late payment or late delivery charges. In terms of legality as well, it's very important to not just be an engineer in the head, right? So you need to know a bit of accounting. You need to read contracts. You may not understand, but then you start asking the right questions, and that's how you learn to begin with. And you must have that sense of familiarity. You must be aware that these are the clauses that are mentioned in the contract. Because otherwise, like Nanda mentioned, the sales guys sign off on things which are non-compliant to the company. For example, like we do solar, there's a lot of push on using agriculture land or even forests, even though it's not reserved, to cut and put solar farms, right? So large organizations, US, European based, they are very against this. For them, we shouldn't sacrifice Mother Nature in order for profitability. So they don't even embark on those projects. So everyone draws a line with the whole ESG that we started. This is their guiding principle, so they wouldn't do this kind of projects even though it could be profitable. So similarly, brands like GE, big MNCs, they draw the lines on what is doable, what is not. So oil and gas companies, they're also trying to move away, right? So they don't do new exploration. Banks are not funding these coal plants. So the world is moving, but coming back to the legal question again, you have to have that sense of familiarity.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. So I think budgeting is not just a matter of internal documentations and internal planning tools, but it does directly trigger legal implication. It is not something that we can do whatever we like since it's just a budget. It does have a significant consequences, as what you can hear from the gentleman. So treat the budget in a very serious manner, in a very accountable and responsible manner. I suppose that this is the bottom line of it. Now, we have last 15 minutes over here, so maybe I will pick some of the key questions that I wanted to ask gentlemen here. What are the risks associated in the event that the cost estimation or the costing has gone wrong in a project? So what kind of risks relating to that, apart from like blowing the budget? So what other kind of significant risks that you will foresee itself, gentlemen? So Murali, maybe you can just take on.
I think I covered this earlier, but I'll just repeat. So one of it is whether you want to go ahead with the project. If there is a budget overload, you make a conscious decision with the management on whether to proceed or to withdraw. The other risk is, of course, I think the risk upfront is easier to manage than risk while executing. So a review is very crucial after winning. So like I said, a handover between the sales team and the project team. But end of the day, I would say it's just a lesson learned, I would say. But for the company, it's usually painful. My ex-boss used to say, my very first job, that for the mistakes that you coming as juniors you make, you should be paying the company, not the company paying you guys, because you guys may come for 6 months, do your tendering, your leave, but then the company still needs to shoulder the risk. But having said that, it's also to start back at the idea that you have to be responsible. You have to say, look, there's mistakes done, and how do we overcome that? But as I highlighted, the risk is what we mentioned.
Thank you very much, Nanda. Over to you.
Yeah, I think the biggest risk here is reputation, right? So this will equate back to your sustainability. So that's what I keep repeating: sustainability, profitability, right? So over budgeting and not managed well, it doesn't mean over budget you cannot manage, right? If it's over budget, doesn't mean you close down and you just wind up. The risk of doing those negative approaches will put your reputation at stake. Your sustainability to grow, your profitability will dip down, right? So these are major concerns there. So always be approachable, be candid, right? Be a salesman, right? Be a salesman. Be ready to discuss, think out of the box. Hey, what am I reading? How can I interpret to the customer? How do I see it? Because they cannot say you're wrong. Nobody has read those documents together. It's been given, you read, it has been given to them, they read. Right? Unless you come to a common forum to discuss, you won't know the perception of each side. So the law gives you the right to argue those perceptions on a certain scale. Right? So be open to that. Don't risk yourself and the reputation, because that comes back to the sustainability of a business. End of the day, when we say business, it's the longevity of not you yourself, but the people who are dependent on you. Right? So it's actually, the project itself is a big ecosystem. Right? It's you one person, you have a chain of people, right? Customer, non-customer. So the biggest risk I see here is your reputation if you decide to close the business, right? And if you want to go, yes, the risk is then you have to face the human nature, then the customer, prospects, etc. So this is the risk that you will see.
Okay, guys, I want to ask before I leave the floor to the students to ask the questions because I think I'm also a student in a sense. So, is there any particular improvements measure or any improvements actions that it is common in practice to rectify overspending on budget or going away from the plan? So is there any kind of improvements approach or measures that firms that you are currently working, or what you have come across in the whole of the supply chains that you have come across? Any particular approach or models that people are using for improvement measure? Yeah, Nanda.
So improvement measure, right? So personally, even I'm learning. So it's, for me, it's still a learning cycle. Every project is new to me. I learn something new from every project. Certain things you can take it for granted, and suddenly, hey, it's popping up new. You wouldn't have encountered it before. You wouldn't have even expected it. So the first and foremost thing is think the unexpected. In any project, even if you're a junior, think the unexpected. What you don't expect, you can put it in front and start off the discussions rolling, right? The measures here, what are the measures here, right? The improvement measures, you always start with tracking. Any project you need to track. You need to track your budget, you need to track the process, you need to track those legalities, whatever in the project you need to track, alright? So dollar and cents always becomes the top, and then with the execution, right? So do a proper tracking. You will find that even if it's the same project that you're doing, it will be different in the next project, right? But your experience and your return of experience to the next member will help solve a lot of other issues, especially on the costing and the execution time. Probably in this project you have done it in so long, right? And that is your benchmark. And the next project that they sell is lesser. So you have a benchmark to say that, guys, historically this is the benchmark and this is what is supposed to be. So maintain a benchmark. Create from the tracking, create a benchmark. Create your experience. As you grow, your experience becomes more expensive, more desirable, more respectable. Alright? Because all this will become an accountability, and they will see you accountable for giving those knowledge. Right? So this is the improvements that you can see. There's no particular tool for that. It's a tool that you create, that's not hard and fast, and you can share to the next person for them to start improving. Right? So really,
I think Nanda has mentioned quite a bit on that. I take this mantra, and it's something I picked up online as well. The truth is, we are all learning. We got to unlearn and relearn. The things that I learned 10 years, 15 years ago, things have evolved. Technology, the way you solve things, the way you negotiate. We grow as individuals. It's not just knowledge, it's also the character. And to me, all of this is continuous. So in terms of even project management, it's what Nanda has mentioned. You may have made a mistake here, you would have learned something, and then yet the same project in a different location with a different project team, you would face a new problem. Right? So you must be quick to adapt, and be quick to realize and see what else can be done. Right? So I think this mantra, and I would like to repeat it: learn, unlearn, and relearn, because that way we keep moving forward.
Thank you very much, gentlemen. So we have last 10 minutes. Now I think we would like to open to the floors. Do you have any questions for our speaker? Do we have any questions for the speaker? Yes, go ahead. Yeah. You can pick up the mic if you want to just make it a bit louder. Yeah, just pick up the mic and speak. Yeah. And you can just mention your name first. Yeah.
My name is Daniel, and I'm a question for Mr. Chan. As you have mentioned earlier, like Mission Impossible, unexpected things might arise. In a situation where unexpected expenses arise during the project, what strategies can be employed to manage and adjust the budget accordingly without compromising the project goals?
Okay, thank you very much. Yeah, I got your questions itself. I think that the answer is pretty much as what Nanda and also Murali have said, which is communication. We know that when in the very undesirable circumstances arise, which is unplanned costs come out, so we have to ask the root cause. What makes this unplanned cost come up? You cannot just keep it to yourself and just chop it off. A very rushed, a very drastic, a very unplanned cost cutting will definitely compromise on certain aspect, which quality is definitely most likely is going to be involved adversely. As I say, many of the young professional or engineers who are lacking of this kind of soft skill, they were just so afraid of speaking up the problem. Dare to speak it up. Don't just keep the problem to yourself. If you keep it to yourself, very likely you're going to just use a very harsh way of bringing the cost down. And that will create even more massive problems later, especially if the unexpected cost is arising due to factors beyond your control. You're going to bring it up because this is the solutions that you need to come up from a team, not only you yourself. So that again goes back to your soft skills, which is, especially among many others, communication skills. How do you convince your stakeholders, which is your line manager or even your client, telling them the whole picture, hey, we are on the same side of the shoe, we are facing the same problem. Do not leave yourself in isolation. If you leave majority on the other side, but you are on the other side of it, you're not going to have a good timing to complete the task. And you definitely is going to just face a very radical kind of a cost cutting with a huge amount of side effects. If you really want to have a planned cost cuttings initiatives, which maybe towards the end I will bring up some of the models that you may want to just consider to prevent these things from happening. But in the incidents that it does happen, I would say the soft skills part, to bring it up as problems that the whole team are facing and let's solve it together, will be a more effective way of addressing these unexpected cost matters. Of course, the worst come to worst, it is the companies will have to just pick up the pocket and just cover it. That will be the last measure, I would say. Alright, have I answered your questions? Thank you very much. Yes, Murali, after you.
So just to give you an example of what could transpire, right? So I think last year, one year or maybe 18 months ago, we had a container shortage globally. For whatever reason, containers were piling up in China, piling up in US, haulages couldn't move, ports were full. So sometimes we would have budgeted for it to be shipped at maybe 20,000 ringgit. I'm giving a very low ball number. All of a sudden, you have this issue and you got to air freight it, right? And that's 120,000. How do you explain to your management that's a 600% or 500% increase? But yet, when you go back to the customer and say, guys, I understand you have a timeline, but this is the scenario, it's beyond me, are you all open to forking out this extra? So the customer is not really pushing for the timeline, he can say, you know what guys, let's give another 2 weeks and 3 weeks and let's see how the situation is. But if he says, no, I'm now responsible to another main contractor, and if I don't deliver this, my LD is more than this 100,000. Because it's cascading, right? You could be a subcon, a sub-subcon. So everybody has different legal implication. But once you highlight this, consciously, as what Nanda said, as an ecosystem, you can decide what's best for the overall project. And then you can make that decision. That's all.
So I think it is still going back to the discussion for solutions rather than just keeping it to one particular person or parties where you have very, very limited choices on that. So do we have any more questions from the floor? Yes, go ahead. So you can pick up the mic and just mention your name first.
Hello, my name is Yogita and I have a question for both Mr. Nanda and Mr. Murali as well. So I'd like to ask, what steps do you take personally to account for contingencies and uncertainties in budgeting process for engineering projects? Could you share any personal experiences, any tough nickels you've encountered as an SME and as well as a corporate sector?
So thanks for the question. So personal. Okay, so I'll share a few scenarios. Right? So now let's take it from the infant stage that we are new. Doesn't mean you're a new engineer. You are new to the organization. Even probably it's your own business and you are new to it, right? The first thing is, what are the experiences that I already have? It doesn't mean that you guys have just graduated and you don't have experience. No, it doesn't mean. The books or the education does give you certain eye openers. Alright? Those are not biblic in nature. Certain eye openers to say that this cannot be. Right? In most cases, like what Chan said, nobody talks about risk in your books. Right? It doesn't appear anywhere in our syllabus. Risk are something that you gain over on the maintenance. So my field has always been the maintenance. So I tend to see the glass half empty. So when I say glass half empty, I look at the risk as my forefront, my opportunities is my bottom line. Okay, but my forefront is always the risk. So when I take a project, I see all the risks incorporated. So the first and foremost thing I do is, personally, for all my projects, even if it's the same project, I read the contents of what we have sold first. Okay, because the question is to go back to my sales guy, hey guy, you have sold this. Or even you as the boss, I actually sold this, but then you are giving me with a certain terms and conditions which I don't agree. So what happens here? We need to negotiate, we need to discuss. Either the sales guy do it or you do it. Right? So these are my personal experiences. So I had this issue whereby they've sold this 40 million over dollar maintenance project with the utility, and I come to know that the whole supply list is wrong, and the supply list accounts for 70%. So what do I do? Who do I challenge? First thing, I will put my foot down to tell the management, guys, we cannot deliver. First and foremost, this is wrong. We cannot deliver in time. We are going to be delayed. What do we do? Right? So taking my experience a bit more senior, the first what I told the management is, we have to open the cards to the customer. This is what Murali has told some time back in the sharing. We need to be open to communicate. So the first thing I told the customer is that, customer, I can't deliver this material. Flat out. I had to put a letter, I have to manage it contractually, inform them I cannot deliver this material, it's totally wrong, and we need to do the re-engineering. Okay, but the pressure was, you still need to deliver by 2021 because our budget says I need to clear by 2021. Imagine, they're willing to pay you 20 million for the material and you don't want the money, so you need to work out for it, right? So the painstaking experience is that you need to face the customer because of your own blunder. When we say your own means the management's blunder, right? And trust me, in most cases, once you have started interacting with the customer, you become their brand. No more the G or no more your company logo. You are the brand for the company. So they look up to you and say what to do next. Right? It's not an easy situation. But if you are not building your interpersonal skills, and you guys actually have better interpersonal skills compared to us who are born in the 70s and 80s and stuff, right? You guys are more extrovert compared to us. We need to build up that structure. People outside are able to communicate. You need to present them. Your interpersonal skill becomes key in this kind of nature, right? So I had to build that reputation. I had to go back to the customer. Yes, take a hit for the company, doesn't matter, but end of the day, we need this hit to ensure you can deliver at the end. Like what I said earlier, your risk management. You need to identify this kind of risk at the beginning. So that's why I put my risk as the forefront. So identify, is my timeline good? Is my contractual signs good? Can we deliver? What are the impacts here? So if I know, say management, I can't deliver this. You are already late now, means we are already in LD, what do we do? So if the organization like us, they're kind enough, they say, okay, incorporate that amount into your project. But SMEs, you can't do that. You're actually on a tight budget. So every dollar and cent counts, right? So how you make the judgment is a collective call. And trust me, nobody is a standalone worker in any organization. Don't put that belief in yourself. Work as a team. Be a team player. Create the team for you. It may be a pleasant, unpleasant situation, but you need to work with a circle of people, and you need to create a forum where the input comes in and the output is for the sustainability and profitability at the end of the day. That will be your bottom line of the situation. Alright, so again, whenever you have a challenge, it's not a pleasant situation, don't stress yourself. You need to discuss. Right? Or you have to bring your leader to work with you. Your downline to work with you. It's not an easy forum, but some people gets it easy, some people gets it hard. Like for me personally, it's not easy. I really have to drag those stakeholders into the picture to make sure that everybody is aligned. This is what we are going to do and this is how we are going to execute. And it's not hard and fast, right? You're still open to ideas. So build that idea, work a way around your community, your ecosystem to find a common solution, right? Always, I get extra budget, it's an easy solution, but you won't get that, right? Create the budget. So that's why I said, you need to see a profitability at the end of the budget. So I've given you a certain budget with certain margin. Can I make it profit, or can I at least sustain those situations? Because not all your budgets will stay as it is for your entire project. It can evolve. Probably your costing of material can reduce. Maybe we are lucky, we save on currency exchange, right? Or we get a better supplier. Your supply chain, you get a better supplier. They have considered something higher. You are saving. So all this saving is for your end of the project, not for the current situation. So this is how I work away around my work, putting the risk as my foremost, I would say, foremost God in the project. So I look at the risk every time to manage my delivery of the project. Right? Is that helping? Yeah.
Okay, thank you. Maybe time is up. So Murali, you want to have a minute to just address the questions from the students?
Being an SME means I'm very dependent on my vendors and suppliers. And some of the things that I've learned over time, being cheaper doesn't mean better. Of course, you hear this all the time, but once you go through that learning curve, so there have been instances where we've also bought and engaged services for those who are slightly more expensive, but in return, you have that peace of mind in terms of delivery. You've got credible vendors and suppliers. You may lose 2, 3, 5%, but there's also been vendors and suppliers who say, it's okay, I will execute for you, you can pay me later. So that takes away a lot of the requirements to pay upfront, to pay deposit. So that's been one of my learning curve. Finding partners and vendors who are reliable and who could also support you on your journey. Number two, to also again echo what Nanda has mentioned, is you build credibility from day one, right? And you're building a brand for yourself. So one of the things my first boss told me, and I've remembered this today, whichever organization you go to, if you carry yourself well enough, there are 2 things no one can take away from you. One is your knowledge, the other one are your contacts. And I hold true to today. The reason why I'm able to sustain after 6 years is the last 10 years of farming and learning and engaging with people has allowed them to come back to me and say, hey, really, you're on your own. Maybe we can try to do something, right? So if you start with the right footing, you put the right mindset there to learn and to engage people, as Nanda said, it's not straightforward because you're a junior, right? Your kulit kena lagi tebal. It means if they scream at you, shout at you, just go like, okay lah, sorry, we'll try to improve. You must have that. As a young engineer coming out, and sorry if I'm diverting slightly, you cannot say, hey, my father who, my grandfather who, you can't take that perception, right? My father multi-millionaire, doesn't matter. If you're going to build a brand for yourself, you must start from zero and be able to take those, I mean, of course within limit, their clients are a bit more rude, but you kind of say, look, I understand where you're coming from, I'm going to try to improve, I'm going to try to learn, and then back that up with facts, right? So reading contracts is important, talking to your teammates are important so that you can face the customer confidently and say that, hey, I know I'm still young to this, I'm a junior guy, but these are the reasons why I'm asking for the contract negotiation, this is why we're asking for some leeway into implementing the project. So that's good.
Thank you very much. Now, towards the end, I would like both gentlemen to just give one word of advice, short one, sentence, to the students. What that would be? Yeah, Murali.
I think I kind of said it in the last two questions. I think learning is ever evolving, so don't stop learning. And there's no one way. Like if you studied engineering today, doesn't mean that's your path. You'll figure out the next 5 to 10 years. Keep it going. Yeah, some of you may be insurance agents, some of you may be doing something else, but you continuously need to learn.
Thank you, Nanda.
I think most of you would have heard this word, but I'm a strong believer of this. Changes are the only factor that is constant in any of our lives and any of our day-to-day actions, right? So same thing for your field. Engineering, for me, I would say, is the basis of where I am today, and it's a foothold that can develop you further, right? Engineers have ventured into accounting, they have also become lawyers, they have also become doctors also, right? And any other things, right? Because the core of engineering builds that nature in you to think out of the norm, right? So again, changes are the only thing constant in any of our lives. So develop yourself, always think out of the box, never put yourself to become saturated, right? Don't be complacent, don't be saturated. The only way to be alert is to know that there's another challenge always coming for you, right?
Thank you very much, gentlemen. So, to the last few words that I would like to share with our audience over here. Now, as we have highlighted since the last questions, continuous improvements is always something, the only secrets and solutions to survive in today's business world. And let's learn from the Japanese people. To them, continuous improvements is what we call kaizen. The other one that I also want to share with you, another Japanese language. If you are driving Toyota, whenever you send a car to service center, go and look for this slogan called Genchi Genbutsu. I didn't study in Japan before, but if you want to know what exactly is Genchi Genbutsu, it basically tells us when you have problems, always go back to the root cause. So what is this wisdoms of the slogans telling us here? Instead of going away and running away from the problem, let's face it and let's plan for it to prepare for the planned and unplanned situation itself. So we definitely hope the sharing today for both the engineering school students to have a better view on the other side of the world on business and accounting. For accountancy students, you will also get to know about the relevance of accountancy in engineering. And for the School of Engineering students, if you would like to just take on a little bit of the diversifications in your study upon completing your engineering study, there is some things in UOW Malaysia that you can look at. It is a diploma in accounting and businesses, which require only completing 3 subjects: business and technology, financial accounting, management accounting, that cover whatever that we have shared today in about shortest time, half a year. In UOW Malaysia, qualifications, it's awarded by the ACCA. So if you want to know more, you can always drop by to PAC office and asking for more. But first and foremost, the most important one, complete your journey of the study and graduate, become a professional engineer with UOW Malaysia School of Engineering. With that, thank you very much for the time of everyone today and the speaker today. Thank you very much. Let's give a big applause to them. So over to MC, yes.
A heartfelt thank you to our esteemed speakers and moderator for sharing their expertise to this enlightening session with us.